Joined by one of the greatest WNBA players of all time, Candace Parker. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Lot to talk about. Let's start with this, because you are an unusual person in some ways to speak to, because I feel like you are an expert on both the WNBA and the NBA, and there aren't that many of those around. So I want to start with your assessment of both leagues today from a fan perspective and also a gameplay perspective.
Well, first and foremost, I think I grew up like everybody watching the NBA. I mean, I grew up in the 90s in Naperville, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. So, it was like school ended and we just went to the championship parade. So from a fan perspective, I think the NBA has mastered entertainment. It has mastered empowering players, and it has mastered bringing the fans into that and, allowing them to know their players. I think the WNBA, when I came into the WNBA, it was 11 years young. And now to look at it fast forward, I think that it's growing. It has been given time to grow. And now the visibility is matching, the speed of the game and just how skilled the athletes are. And so I think from a fan perspective, we're looking at two of the most exciting leagues, and with the ability to continue to grow and expand. And then from a broadcast perspective, we're looking at one of the most skilled points of the game. You talk about positionless basketball. We're watching things we haven't ever seen before. We're watching 6'4", 6'5" posts be able to catch the ball, shoot it, pass it, all those things in WNBA. We're watching Wemby, who is 7'3", 7'4", be able to bring the ball up, finish at the other end, handle the break. So I think we're in an exciting time in sports, in basketball, in both leagues.
The criticism of the NBA is that, look, there's too many games, there's too many three-pointers. These regular season games kind of slog along. Do you agree with that or disagree?
I think these playoffs have been some of the most exciting playoffs.
Playoffs, yes. Regular season, though?
I think that the NBA Cup, the midseason tournament, has changed the competitive level a little bit to start the season and has changed the engagement. I think the NBA's point of emphasis has been to get fans to come in and watch before the NFL is over. And so I think they're doing that with the NBA midseason tournament. Are there too many games? Possibly. Is that going to change?
No
chance. No chance. Did you see the TV deal that they just signed?
Mm-hmm.
I think just everybody has issues with regular season games. How do we get players to continue to compete? And, I think it's showing in this playoffs that seeding matters. You look at the West, it came down to 1 or 2 games that separated the 2 seed from the 7 seed. And so I think teams are realizing how important it is to win those games early.
You mentioned the TV deal. The WNBA collective bargaining agreement is coming up in October. You talk about in your book a little bit about how you struggled with the low salary in the WNBA and how you had to play abroad and you got paid 20 to 30 times more when you're playing abroad. I'm curious, you're friends with Nneka Ogwumike, who's the WNBA president of the Players Association there. Have you guys talked about what the WNBA players should ask for as they negotiate a new CBA?
So I've never been a player rep. I've never been, a vice president or president or any of that, but I have been in on the meetings. Nneka Ogwumike was my teammate for many, many years in LA, is doing a wonderful job as president, and she is great at listening. And I think that she's listening to everyone, both players that are still involved in the league and both past players. And I think the biggest thing is just making sure that we're headed in the right direction. I think the WNBA has seen the visibility grow. I think the WNBA understands the impact of, continuing to, I think, have those teams that are added to the mix. But for me, most importantly, yes, salary. But the second thing is roster spots. The roster spots have to increase. And that's been something that I've echoed over and over and over again to Nneka Ogwumike, is you've got to give these women a chance that are the 13th and 14th players on the team to develop. You look at Alex Caruso, right? Start off in the G League.
Sure.
Mark Dagnall, his coach, started off in the D League. Like, coaches, players alike need to have an opportunity to grow. And to be able to have the player development. And so I think the WNBA has to really seriously understand how valuable it is to have that 14th and 15th roster
Well,
spot.
to that point, because I guess, look, even if they roster 13 or 14 players, how much development are you getting if you're just sitting on the bench? Does there need to be sort of a developmental league like the NBA has?
I think that's to come.
Yeah.
I think that's a little biting off a little bit more than we can chew right now. But from the standpoint of being able to develop these players that can contribute, that may not be able to contribute now, but may have something to give later, cutting them is doing a disservice to the league, and it's also doing a disservice to its players.
Something caught my eye in the book. You mentioned that there was, I think it was in 2009, there was a big ESPN feature back when they had ESPN the magazine about you and about sort of how far can Candace Parker go, but also how far can the WNBA go. And it struck me that we're kind of having the same conversation again here 15 years later, but Caitlin Clark is largely the center of it. And I'm curious why you think the national attitude around women's basketball has shifted so recently with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. Is it NIL and the focus on college basketball, there was focus on college basketball when you played too. I mean, the arc for women's basketball, I think generally speaking, is you have peaked in college and then it kind of peters out in the pros. Do you feel like we are now finally in an era where that changes, or are there still concerns of yours that maybe this is just a blip in time?
It's so interesting because it has never been a problem with visibility for college, because you're part of a university that had time to grow. I was a part of Tennessee. Tennessee had been synonymous with winning in women's basketball. I went to center stage. I played in front of sold out arenas. But at that time, there was no dollar amount that you put with that. So then when you go to a WNBA that is still growing, the platform changes. And I think the WNBA struggled to figure out what to do with stars. There were a number of times where I'd see my jerseys, on every fan in the stands. There, I said, "Are you serious?" one time after I blocked a shot. That was on a t-shirt, but there was no value or dollar they could put behind that. A lot of the corporations, once you got to the WNBA, well, women can't sell sneakers. They can't be on video game covers. That doesn't sell. Well, now guess what? We have numbers, we have analytics, we have data that proves otherwise. NIL has been a huge reason why that the WNBA has had to move forward. Because guess what? Now when you look at Instagram followers, they're following the women more than the men, right? And so what changed with that? Now the WNBA has to be able to then have these stars, take them back to where their fans are. You see Asia Wilson going back to South Carolina and playing out in front of a sold out arena. You're seeing the Vegas Aces take Jackie Young and play against Arika Egumbawale back at Notre Dame. And so now you're seeing the smart moves of positioning the star players in front of fan bases and, visibility and all of those things. And so I think NIL has had a huge amount of that, but also the WNBA stepping their game up and being prepared and knowing that the power that they have and the numbers don't lie.
It seems to me the next stage for the WNBA, like we may be in the stage right now where the general public that was not a WNBA fan 15 or 20 years ago are now making the leap to at least tune in to some games. You're like, okay, I've heard the buzz around this, or I know Caitlin Clark, and so let me give me a chance to watch. But I would imagine there's a big swath of the audience that now knows a star player on each team, but maybe that's where it stops, and they don't know the rest of the players, and it's hard to get engaged in a game or a season if you only know one player and you don't know the backstory to everyone else. What can the WNBA do to increase the visibility of all of the other players who are not the Paige Beckers or Angel Reeses or the ones getting all the attention?
So interesting to me because the NBA fights like hell to not go up against the NFL, right? Like we changed our entire Tuesday, Thursday show so that when football season ends, the Thursday show starts. But the WNBA, time and time again, because of time slots on television, has had to go head to head with the NBA. There were numbers that came out the other day about the viewership and it dropping or whatever. That was going up against the game 6 of the NBA playoffs. Yeah. So I think, to me, the visibility element, the first time the NCAA tournament was on ABC was when Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark played against each other. Up until that point, it was on ESPN. The rivalry games were on ESPN. And so I think it's giving it a chance. It's giving it TV slots where people will actually watch. And we've seen the numbers. When I came into the WNBA, people don't remember, 1.9 million people tuned in to watch my ABC game. And so when you put numbers together and you consistently know there's a home for it, this is a TV slot, this is where it lives, you understand what TNT's show has done with the Thursday night. People know where to go watch it. We have to do the same for women. And I think that now, broadcasts aren't looking at this as a charity. It's looking at it as a real opportunity for growth. 95% of sports that are shown on television are men. Do you think that number is going to go up or down? I think it's going to go down. It's going to be more women that are going to be shown. We're seeing more of softball. We're seeing more of basketball. But it's like having to fight that fight as opposed to just understanding that's where it's going and making the smart decision. I think we're seeing television everywhere realize the importance of having women on their network.
How do you think Kathy Engelbert has done as the commissioner?
I think Kathy has really taken hold of the league during a time of tremendous growth, and I think that there have been a number of steps forwards, leaps forwards. You talk about charter flights. I think my main thing when I retired was player experience, and that player experience has grown. I think, you talk about the facilities, you talk about the owners that are owning. It's no longer just millionaires, it's billionaires. And guess what? You need money to be able to have something grow.
That's another thing you mentioned in the book, how it's sort of the most important thing for the progression of this league is the ownership, actually.
The ownership.
And who is an owner of the league.
And to direct that. And again, I think competition fosters growth. If you look at I watch Showtime, right? The reason why Dr. Buss wanted to build a winning team was because he was sick of seeing Red Auerbach win championships. Winning time, sorry. And smoking his cigar after winning championships. Yeah. You look now, fast forward, one of the biggest rivalries is Vegas and New York. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that their owners have really been the catalyst for the league and the growth of practice facilities, of chartered flights, of having chefs and things like that. So I think that that's where it's going. And I think Kathy now is doing a good job of making sure that she's bringing owners in that are able to do that.
One of the points you make in the book that caught my eye too was that you mentioned, look, it's not always the richest owner that is the best owner. And I think this is a tough situation when a team is for sale and they're looking to cash out at the highest price. Well, there may need to be some league intervention there to being like, well, wait a second, is this the right owner? Is it, yes, they're offering you the most money for this team maybe, but what is the future look in terms of this owner's plan for a team? I don't know, that can get into a sticky situation, I suppose, if the league's like, yeah, you may be making a little bit more money selling it in this direction, but we'd prefer you to sell it here. It's not a new problem. This has existed in all sports, but it is new for the WNBA.
It's not apples to apples. There's no way you just roll the ball out and the same fans that go support the NBA are going to just come and support the WNBA, and vice versa. It's a different style of basketball. It's a different demographic that you're targeting. And it's a different atmosphere. And so I don't think it's apples to apples, and you have to be strategic with who you allow to own the teams. Now, with that being said, the ones that are being sold to teams that have the most money have to go and find those people that have been involved in women's sports and understand, the history of where it's been, because you will be able to avoid a lot of those mistakes of thinking that you can just have a team send out season tickets to whoever and think it's going to be successful.
Another thing you haven't exactly hid, but it's in the book, and there's in fact a small chapter dedicated to it, so I wanted to bring it up to you, is your feelings about Geno Auriemma, who just won another national championship. And I was curious, where do you think, you write straight out in the book, I've never liked Geno Auriemma, and I don't think he's like me either. Is it a personality thing? Is it just a vestige of your old rivalry from Tennessee and UConn? What is the genesis of that?
I am so old school in that I can remember my dad went to the University of Iowa, right? Played basketball 4 years there. Iowa didn't recruit my brother when he came out. So when Iowa recruited me, guess what? I wasn't going to Iowa because they disrespected my brother. it's the same thing. Pat didn't like Geno, so I didn't like Geno. Like, that's all it was. It was rivalry. It was sports.
But does that mean he doesn't like every player that went to the University of Tennessee?
I don't know. You have to ask him that question.
Yeah.
I can't speak for him, but I just know that, we figured out a way, I guess, for one Olympics to work together. I don't know if it was all that pretty, but, I was candid in a lot of things about my book, and, I don't think it was hidden. There's a lot of people in men's sports that don't necessarily get along and don't like each other. And I think that has to be something that we grow into in female sports. Like, it's okay to not get along with people, right? It's okay to not like someone. It's okay to not see eye to eye with someone. And so I think that was my purpose in including that, is like, it's all a part of it.
Do you feel that there's maybe a candor among WNBA players, either because it's just a difference in personality between men and women, or because the league is newer and maybe there's not as much of decades long of sort of media training that goes with life as a major pro athlete in men's sports, that will allow the WNBA to maybe leapfrog men's sports in some ways, because their star female athletes are willing to say things that male athletes have become too shy to say?
I don't know if they've been too shy to say. I think they're zeros at the end of their check. They don't have to.
Right. Yeah.
So I hope we get to a point where we don't have to say the things we say. But guess what? When I show up, we are a women league run by a woman, 80% African American, part of the LGBTQ plus community. I mean, we are a league made up of the majority of the minority in this country. And so I think the communities that we come from, we have to say those things, because we represent all those voices that have been silenced in society for so many years. I mean, you think about how difficult it is, and I won't get off my soapbox, but to be a woman, like, it's, there were so many times where it was like, go be strong, but like, don't power cling and look too muscular because you have to put on a dress, or don't go out there and be competitive and you're saying the same things that a Kevin Durant or a LeBron James are saying, but that's not ladylike. So it's like the double standard that I think society puts on women in general, and we're just tired of it.
You said that you kind of hope maybe that you escalate to the point where you're all paid a big enough salary where you don't have to say that. But from my perspective, either as a fan or a reporter, I like that. I want more people to be outspoken. Like, this whitewash nature of professional athletes not saying anything because they get paid too much. That's boring. Nobody wants that.
I'm in agreement with you, but I mean, a couple more zeros, on your check.
Well, keep the candor up, though. Somehow link the candor to the money. You're the president of Adidas women's basketball. What does that role mean, and how much of your time is spent doing that?
What's crazy is growing up, I was always taught to chase people and passion. I've been a part of Adidas for 16 years in my pro career. I've been through injuries with them. I've gone abroad. They've supported me. When I had my daughter, they were the first to support. I wore it 4 years in college. So that's 16 years just pro. 4 years in college, Tennessee was Adidas. 2 years in high school, they sponsored my team and sent me all the exclusive T-Max. And so it's become one of my passions, is to grow the game through the lens of not only being a signature athlete and having a signature shoe, but then now trying to open up the doors for the next signature athlete and the next person that loves three stripes. So to be in this role, I think it's a different way to kind of help change the game of basketball. And so I'm really enjoying it, doing it with a brand that I've been a part of for 16 years.
Another shift you're making is moving from TNT Sports, which just wrapped up their coverage of the NBA. So that's it for the NBA on TNT. But it won't be it for Candace Parker broadcasting NBA games, because you're moving over to Amazon. Do you expect your role as a broadcaster to significantly change as you make that change? Have you had discussions with Amazon already about what that may look like?
Listen, I wouldn't go anywhere where I would have to change who I am. I think that we're at a great spot in terms of a partnership. And I think that's what I seek now, is genuine partnerships with people that, I enjoy sitting down talking basketball with. I mean, I grew up watching Dirk Nowitzki. I think everybody tried to do a little fade with the leg out. I love Steve Nash and watching him operate and figuring out how he sees the game. Blake Griffin, I was in that same era of, Oklahoma, and then he was with the Clippers when I was out there. So Taylor Rooks, great friend of mine, met her at TNT, have continued to, keep in touch and have enjoyed. So I'm just looking forward to sitting down and talking hoops. Udonis Haslem, consummate vet with Miami, and got to know him through my relationship with Dwayne Wade. So I'm just excited to sit down and talk basketball, and I'm not going to change who I am.
And you'll do both NBA and
I'll
WNBA
do WNBA
coverage, right?
and
Yeah.
NBA, and I think that the best job other than playing basketball is talking about it.
Last question. Why did you write the book?
I wrote the can-do mindset because I felt like I had different perspectives. I've been the rookie, I've been the vet, now I'm retired. Different motherhood perspective, being the daughter, but going through life and understanding I've been divorced. I've been the kid that's parents got divorced. I've been on the Olympic team, I've been cut from the Olympic team. I've won a lot of championships, I've lost a lot. And so I think now is a time of writing a book about basketball, but it's really about life, and it's about, continuing to understand how important navigating negativity and also loving the process, really focusing on the journey and the people and the passions that give you purpose. So I felt like now is a great time, and I've always wanted to be an author. I've always written. I've always done poems and journals and stories. My English teacher was actually at
Did you have help writing the book?
I had help writing the book, but when I tell you I'm the worst person to have help write the book, because I'm no, I don't like that, I'm changing that. I just always have loved writing and words and how, they can tell your story from, and I wanted it to feel like it was me talking to you.
Well, I guess one quick follow-up on that is a decent amount of the book is dedicated to the mothering point and how you went through that challenge. Do you think that the WNBA now does enough to support those players that are mothers? Because as you point out in the book, it ain't easy trying to bring up a newborn and then having to go right back to work and play. You need a little community. I mean, I know it just as my own parent to jump right back into things. It's hard to do that. And it's you're hopeful that there's a community around you that can help, but having that support from your workplace goes beyond just your individual family.
The WNBA has an opportunity to set the standard for what maternity leave and support of motherhood looks like. And during my time, it was 53 days from when I had my daughter to when I started playing basketball. And during those 53 days, I didn't get paid, because at the time there was no paid maternity leave. At the time we were splitting hotel rooms, and so I had to buy out half of my room so my mom could come take care of my daughter because I was nursing her. And I nursed her for 15 months. There was no child care. There was none of that. Now there is, but there's still far more things we can do to support motherhood. We're playing during those the years of your life. You're playing, and then you're done, and then it's you try to plan. Let's have those conversations now about planning for motherhood for players that really want to do that after they play. Let's support the mothers that are trying to play as well as balance career. So I think the WNBA has the opportunity to be the poster child for that.
What might that look like from a maternity leave standpoint?
I think maternity leave paid. I also think it's coming up with...
For a year?
I think it's a year, but I also feel as though that there needs to be some sort of plan for what that looks like from a league standpoint, whether it's the NFL where you can, you're put on IR, or because here's the thing, the teams can't just carry the load. The WNBA has to step in as well.
Right.
And so...
Because there's a disincentive from the team, right? They're always going to want you to come back.
But also about cutting. So, what's the time frame that you can cut a player after they've been, pregnant or, had a child or whatever. So I just feel like the rules are a little gray area right now, and it needs to be more black and white, and we can be the ones that set the tone and set the support for the players.
Candace, thanks for joining us.
You're the best.
Appreciate it.
You.